Deus, praise me in your sovereignty. We are the servants of the Holy One, whom we revere and whose Torah we revere at all times. Not on mortals do we rely, nor upon angels do we depend, but on the God of the universe, the God of truth, whose Torah is truth, whose prophets are truth, and who abounds in deeds of goodness and truth. In God do we put our trust, and to God's holy, precious being do we utter praise. Open our hearts to your Torah, answer our prayers and the prayers of all your people Israel, for goodness, for life, and for peace. Amen. Amen. All right. Let's have a yeah. So what I said earlier is there are no microphones today. I mean, the microphones turn on. But something at some point is not putting sound through those speakers. So what I ask you is, if you need any of us to raise the volume, just let us know louder, please. And if it's too loud and I'm shouting, it's like the AC. Half of you are going to put like this. All right. we were talking about earlier at the bottom of page 141.
We're on page 1007, verse 5, towards the bottom of the page.
Baruch Adonai Baruch Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Baruch Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torto. Baruch Atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Page, where we are, page 1010, verse 15, towards the top of the page. 1010, verse 15, towards the top of the page.
Tamod Yerushalmi V'Gafal V'Shifra Revi'i. One of the interesting things for me in this reading today is to think about how do you achieve for human beings to behave in a particular way, right? Moses is imploring the Israelites to follow the mitzvot, and there are different arguments that he sort of makes as it goes on. One of them is, how glorious are these laws? They're righteous, right? In other words, there should be a logical appeal to living in a society with these laws, and that should engender a certain conformity of behavior. It could be about the lawgiver, God's self, that the authority behind the laws is God and God's divinity, and therefore one should be compelled. Some of it's just a direct appeal. Just do this, do this, do this. Some of it is you've seen what God has done, how God took you out of Egypt with signs and wonders, and what God did at Baal Peor. You've seen the power behind the lawgiver,
Kitoli Bani, Ubne Bani, Nishna, No Shantom, No Shantom, No Shantem, Ort, Ishkatem, Diasitem, Pesel Tunato, Diasitem Hara, Beine Adleha, Laha, So Haidoti, Bochem Hayom, Et Hashamayim Yeka Ort, Ki Avot Obedu, Maher, Me'al Haaretz, Asher Atem Odrim, Et Yadel Shama L'Rishto, Lo Tarifon Yamim Aleh, Ki Yishamei Kisham Edu, Keifis Adonai, Etem Ba'anim, V'nishatem Mitei Mispar, V'avoyim Asher Yinahei, Adonai Etem Shama, V'avratem Sham Elohim, Aseh Yedei Adam, Eight forever, Asher Lo Yirun V'lo Yishmu'un, V'lo Yokun V'lo Yirkun, U'bikashtem Misham, Et Adonai U'matzata, Ki Tidrashenu B'chol V'b'chol U'b'chol Nashachol, V'tzar Lacha U'tza'u Chol Adonrim Ha'ele, V'acherit Hayamim V'shalta Ad Adonai Lehecha, V'shamata B'cholo, Ki Erachum Adonai Lehecha, Lo Yakachol Lo Yashkitecha, Lo Yishkan Et Rid Avotecha, Asher Nishba Lehem, Ki Shamno Yamim Shanim, Asher Hayu Lefanecha, Lemin Hayom Asher, Baralehim Adom Al Haaretz, U'mitzeh Hashamayim, Bi'ad Ketzeh Hashamayim, Hamiyah, Kadavar Hagadol Hazeh, Oh Hanishama Kamohu, Hashama Aham Aham, Kol Elohim Yidaber B'toch ha'esh, Kasher Shamata Ato Vayektiv, Oh Hinasa Elohim Lavo, Kachat Lo Goy, Mikeret Goy B'masot, Aton Motim, U'b'milchama, U'b'yad Chazaka, U'b'shoran U'tuyah, U'bora'im Gdolim Kecho, Asher Asa Lachem, Adonai Elechem B'Mitzrayim, Le'enechem, Le'enecha, Ato Ha'eta Ladad, Ki Adonai Hu Elohim, Ein Od Levato, Min Hashamayim, Tishmiacha Et Kolo Yasrecha, Yal Ha'aretz Tercha Et Yisho Hadalah, Udra Shamata B'toch ha'esh, V'tachati Et Avatecha V'yitpagaro Acharecha, V'yotziata B'chona B'chochocha V'gedol Mitzrayim, V'harihim Shkoyim Gdolim V'atzomim V'chol Mipanecha, V'havyecha V'ten Lecha Et Atam Nachala Chayom Hazeh, V'yad Ha'ayom Asher Elabecha, Ki Adonai Hu Elohim, B'shamayim Ha'av Yal Ha'aretz Mitachat Od, V'shamata Et Kover V'yeshkoto, Asher Anochi Mitzarecha Hayom, Asher Yitav Lecha V'bonecha Acharecha, U'leman Ha'alich Yamim Al Ha'adamah, Asher Adonai Lehecha Noten B'chol Kol Yamim, Kol Hayamim.
Baruch Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torah, emet v'hai olam natan v'tokenu Baruch Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Shkara. On the occasion of your birthday celebration, Yishabel Chalatin Abraham Yitzhak Yaakov Zerah Kara Kovlayam, Yuvaret, Ariel ben Abraham Basar, may God bless our ancestors Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah, bless Tom, on the occasion of reaching the 70th year of life, with reverence for God, the Torah, and respect for the Shabbats. May the Holy Blessed One continue to watch over you and your family, helping you be
Okay, we're on page, where are we? We're on page 1014, verse 41 towards the middle of the page. 1014, verse 41 towards the middle of the page.
Yaakov, Michael and Yaakov, Shishi.
Baruch Adonai Barak.
Baruch Adonai Barak Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Barak Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch Adonai Eloheinu melech olam, asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim, v'natan lanu torto. Baruch Adonai notei haTorah. אז יביא משה שלוש ערים בעיר הירדן מזרח השמש, ונשמה רוצח אשר יצח את רעהו כבריתת ולא משונא ולא מפלוא, 30 בניו. מפול שלשום בנס אל אחת מן הערים האלה חי, את עץ במדבר בארץ המישור הלבני, יד רמות עד גלעדי, את גולן בבשן ובנשים. זאת התורה אשר שם משה לפני בני ישראל, אלה העדות והחוקים והמשפטים אשר דיבר משה אל בני ישראל בצאתם ממצרים, בעבר הירדן בגוי מול בית פרעה בארץ זכור מלכון רי אשר יושב בחשבון, אשר נקרא משה לבני ישראל בצאתם ממצרים, וישוב את ארצו ואת ארץ עוב מלך הבשן, שני מלכי עמרי אשר בעבר ירדן מזרח שמש מהרוער, אשר עזבתנה ארעדון ביער ציון וכמון בכל הערבה עבר הירדן מזרחה, ביד ים הערבה תחת אשדוד הכניסתה. Baruch Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan banu Torah emet v'chayei olam v'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai notei haTorah.
Mickey B, I want to welcome you back from Eretz Yisrael. We're going to give you a chance to bench Gomel first, and then I will give you a blessing. So you can do it in either language. So the way you benching Gomel is a way of saying thank you, God, for letting me pass through what was a dangerous situation, which one of the standard concepts of a dangerous situation is to pass over a large body of water, hence the Atlantic Ocean. And so the most common time that people bench Gomel, one of the common times, is when they make a transatlantic flight. And so there's a congregational response if you want. It's a lot of flipping between books. It is on 142 where it says congregation response. You do the first. If you want to do it in Hebrew, you're certainly welcome to. We're going to do the response in English.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hagomel l'chayei avim tovot ישראל ויאמר עליהם שמע ישראל את החוקים ואת המשפטים אשר אנוכי דובר באזניכם היום ומרתם אותם ושמעתם לעשותם אדוני אלוהינו כרת עמנו ברית בחורב לא את אבותינו כרת אדוני את הברית הזאת כי איתנו אנחנו אלה פה היום כולנו חיים פנים בפנים דבר אדוני עמכם בהר מתוך האש אנוכי עומד בין אדוני בעיניכם בעת ההיא להגיד לכם את דבר אדוני כי יראתם מפני האש ולא עליהם בהר עליתם בהר לאמור אנוכי אדוני אלוהיך אשר הוצאתיך מארץ מצרים מבית עבדים לא יהיה לך אלוהים אחרים על פני לא תעשה לך פסל כל תמונה אשר בשמיים ממעל ואשר בארץ מתחת אשר במים מתחת הארץ לא תשתחווה להם לא תעבדם כי אנוכי אדוני אלוהיך אלקנה פקוד עבור אבות על בנים ועל שילשים ועל לבנים לשונאי ויוסף פסל אלפים ללוואי ושומרי מצוותי לא תישא את שם אדוני אלוהיך לשווא כי לא ינקה אדוני את אשר יישא את שמו לשווא שמור את יום השבת לקדשו כאשר ציווך אדוני אלוהיך ששת ימים תעבוד ועשית כל מלאכתך ביום השביעי שבת לאדוני אלוהיך לא תעשה כל מלאכה אתה ובנך וביתך ועבדך ואמתך ושרך וחמורך וכל בהמתך וגרך אשר בשעריך למען ינוח עבדך ואמתך כמוך וזכרת כי עבד היית בארץ מצרים ויוציאך אדוני אלוהיך משם ביד חזקה ובזרוע נטויה על כן ציווך אדוני אלוהיך לעשות את יום השבת כבד את אביך ואת אמך כאשר ציווך אדוני אלוהיך למען יאריכון ימיך ולמען ייטב לך על האדמה אשר אדוני אלוהיך נותן לך לא תרצח לא תכאב לא תגנוב לא תנברך את שווא לא תחמוד אשת רעך ולא תדבר ביד רעך שדהו ועבדו ומותו שורו וחמורו וכל אשר לרעך
יתגדל ויתקדש מרבה ועמד יברכותה והמלך מלכותה בחייך וביומך וחיי דכל בית ישראל בגלה בגלה ובזמן קריב ומרומם ישמרה ומררה לעולמו מיומיה יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ותאמר ותנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי קודשה בריחו לעילה מן כה בחטא ושירתה תושבחתה ונחמתה דמירם בעלמה v'meru amen. Ya'amod Abraham ben Moshe Sviva Serayeta Maftir.
We're on page 1020, verse 16, towards the bottom of the page. 1020, verse 16, towards the bottom of the page.
Baruch hu et Adonai Hamorach. Baruch Adonai Hamorach Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech olam asher bacha banu mikol ha'amin v'natan lanu et torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Kabed et abicha ve'et imecha כאשר ציווך עליך, למען יאריכון ימיך, ולמען ייטב לך על האדמה אשר אנהלך נותן לך, לא תרצח ולא תכאב ולא תגנוב ולא תענה בריך אישה ולא תחמוד אשת רעך ולא תתאבד בית רעך. Shadeu Avdo, Vahdo, Vishara, Vachamoro, V'cholashem,
L're'echa.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech olam asher natan lanu Torat emet v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Ya'amdu Hamagbiya Golelet. Please rise for lifting Tayin of the Sefer Torah. Vezot HaTorah asher Pi Adonai B'yah Torah, 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 Tzivan lana Moshe. Torah, 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 Tzivan lana Moshe. Torah, 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 Tzivan lana Moshe. Torah, 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 Tzivan lana Moshe. Morasha Kelat Yaakov, Morasha Kelat Yaakov, Morasha Kelat Yaakov, Torah Tzivan lana Moshe. As the Torah best, we too take our seats. The Haftarot for the next 7 weeks are reflective of the calendar and not of the content of the Torah portion. Usually, the scriptural reading from prophets is an echo of the reading from the Torah. But on the 7 weeks following Tisha B'Av, the 9th day of Av, which we can speak about a little bit more, there are special readings. The 9th day of Av is a day of national mourning for the Jewish people. We mark the destruction of the first temple on that day, the second temple on that day, other ancient things that were calamities that befell the Jewish people. It also is the day on which the king's edict to expel the Jews from England in 1290 was announced. It is also the day that July 31st, 1492 fell out on, which was the day on which the Jews of Spain had the final day on which they had to either convert or leave the country. So a lot of terrible things happened on that day, and it becomes a day of national mourning. And therefore the 7 Haftarot after that day of mourning, leading up to Rosh Hashanah, are Haftarot of comfort. Tisha B'Av, destruction, is understood in our tradition to be divine punishment for our misbehavior. And so now we read 7 Haftarot of God taking us back. And all of these readings will be from chapters 44 through 66 of Isaiah. Although there was only one book of Isaiah in the Hebrew Bible, it's quite evident that the book of Isaiah was actually 2 different authors. The first 39 chapters are a prophet Isaiah who lives during the destruction of the northern kingdom of Israel, which is conquered by the Assyrians in 721 BCE. The final chapters, chapters 40 through 66 of the book of Isaiah, are reflective of a prophet Isaiah who lives in the time of Cyrus, who is Cyrus the Mede, the Persian, who conquers the Babylonians in 539 BCE. 50 years prior to that, the Babylonians had conquered Israel, destroyed the first temple, taken the nobility, the aristocracy, the leadership, and others into captivity in Babylonia, where we resided for those 50 years. In 539 BCE, when Cyrus takes over, you can go to the British Museum and read well, I can't read it, it's in a language I don't understand, but you can see the cylinder in which Cyrus proclaimed that all peoples who have been captured by the Babylonians can return to their ancestral homelands, including the Israelites. And the prophet Isaiah, in chapters 40 through 66, is saying to the people, let's go. Let's go back. God has been good to us. God's graciousness is extending to the Israelite people. God is taking us back. So all of these 40 through 66, I don't know the specific content today necessarily, but the big picture here is God is taking us back, and we should go back. And so these are messages of a restored relationship between Israel and God, preparing us for the restored relationship which we hope to achieve on a personal level at the High Holy Days, when we seek atonement for our wrongdoing and repair our own relationships.
Haftarah is on page 1033. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech olam asher b'chaha b'yim tovim Adonai, Baruch Havasah Yachdav, Ki Adonai Diber, Kol Omer Kira, V'yomah Moekra, Kol Havasah Chatzir, V'chol Chasdo, Ketzitz HaSodeh, Yavesh Chatzir, Navel Tzitz, Ki Ruach Adonai Nashva Bo, Achen Chatzir Ha'am, Yavesh Chatzir Navel Tzitz, Udevar Eloheinu Yakum Leolam, Al Hagabo Alilach Mivaseret Zion, Harim Ivakoach Kolech, Mivaseret Yerushalayim, Harim Altirai, Iri Liarei Yehuda, Hine Elohechem, Hine Adonai Elohim b'chazak yavo, Uzro Moshla Lo, Hine Sachro Ito, Uvulato Lefanav, Kiro Edro Yereh, Bizro Yekabetz Telaim, Uecheko Yisah, Alo Yinahel, Mimodad Shalom Mayim, Shamayim Bazeret Ikein, B'chol Bashalim, B'chol Bashalim Losh, Afaharetz, B'shakal B'peles Harim, Ugavo B'yozne Noim, V'tikein et Ruach Adonai, V'shatzato Yodienu, et Minoas V'yivinehu, V'yelamdehu, V'yorach Mishpat, V'yelamdehu Da'at, V'derech Tevunot Yodienu, Ein Goyim, Mahamidli, Ukeshachat Meoznaim, Nechshavu, Ein Giyim, Kadak Yitov, Ulevano, Ein Deva, V'chayato, Ein De'olah, Kol hagoyim ki ein negdo, me'efes v'tohu nechshevu lo, v'yelmi tedamyun el, u'manu ta'achu lo, ha'pesel nasa ha'charash, v'tzorev, v'zahav yirak henu, Kesef Shorei Hamsukon Terumo Eitz Lo Yirkav Yivcha Chorosh Chacham Vakesh Lo Lahachnim Pesel Lo Yimot Halo Teruhu Halo Tishma'u Halo Ugame Rosh Lachem Halo Havinotem Mosdov Haaretz Hayoshev Alchuhu Haaretz Vayishavehu Kachagavim Anotecha Tov Shamayim Vayitachem Kohel Lashavet Anoten Rosnim Le'ayin Shotei Eretz Katohu Asaba Afbali Tohu Afbahazarahu Ashoresh Ba'aretz is on Vegam Nashah Bohem Vayibashu Usara Kakashti Sa'en Viel Mi Tizam Yuni Vieshveh Yoma Kadosh Tomorrow Menechem Boreu Bihora Ele Amotzi Bemispor Tzeva Lechulam L'Shem Yikra Meiro Bonim Yavich Koach Ish Lo Nedor Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam tzur kol ha'olamim tzadik b'chol hadorot ha'el ha'ne'eman ha'omev yoseh ha'medaber u'mekayem shekol devarav emet v'tzedek ne'eman atahu Adonai Eloheinu v'ne'emanim devarecha v'davor echad mivarecha rachol yoshuv reikam ki el melech ne'eman v'rachamon atah baruch atah Adonai ha'el ha'ne'eman b'chol devarav rachem al Tzion ki hi beit chayenu lalu v'nefesh toshia b'mheira v'yameinu baruch atah Adonai Mesameach Tzion b'vonecha Samcheinu Adonai Eloheinu b'Eliyahu hanavi avdecha u'malchut beit David Meshichecha v'mheira yavo v'yagel libeinu al kiso lo yeshezo v'lo yuchal od acharim et kevodo ki v'shem kodshecha nishbata lo shelo yichben neiro li'olam va'ed baruch atah Adonai Magen David al haTorah v'al avodah v'al hanvim v'al yom haShabbat hazeh shenatata lanu Adonai Elohim parashim ka befi kol chai, tamid le'olam bo'ed, baruch atah Adonai, mekadesh ha-Shabbat.
We will conclude the Torah service in a moment with the return of the Sefer Torah to the Aron. It seems nevertheless appropriate this time to say a prayer for the state of Israel, and I will speak and answer questions about the law that was recently passed during my drash. So if you want to join me in a prayer for the state of Israel, we can find that together on page 149 in the blue Sidurim. Avinu Shebashamayim, Sul Yisrael v'go'alo, Barek et Medinat Yisrael, Reshit Smichat Gulatenu, Hagen Aleha be'evrat chasdecha, Ufros Aleha Sukat Shlomecha, Ushlach Oracha v'amatecha l'rashea Sareha v'yotzeha, V'takanem be'etza tova milfanecha, Hazek et Yidei Migine Eret Koshenu, V'chanchelem Eloheinu Yeshua v'ater nitzachon te'atrem, ונתת שלום בארץ ושמחת עולם ליושביה ונאמר Amen. Please rise for the returning of the Sefer Torah 153. Yehalelu Hashem Adonai, ki niskah Shemo levado, Hodo la'aretz v'shamayim, vayarem kehen le'amo, tila lecho chasidav, livnei Yisrael am gerovo. Hallelujah, hallelujah. Mizmor leDavid, Havu l'Adonai ben Elim, Havu l'Adonai kavod va'oz, Havu l'Adonai kevod shemo, Ishtachavu l'Adonai behad v'kodesh. Kol Adonai alamayim el kavod hirim, Adonai alamayim rabim. Kol Adonai v'koach, Kol Adonai v'hadar, Kol Adonai shover harazim, v'shaber Adonai et arzei ha'levanon, v'yakidem k'mo egel Lebanon v'Sirion k'mo ben Remim. Kol Adonai chosev lavotesh, Kol Adonai yachel midbar, Kol Adonai midbar kadesh, Kol Adonai yechol ha'ayalot, vayechesov ye'arot uveichalo kulo merkavot. Adonai lamavu yashta, vayeshev Adonai melech le'olam, Adonai oz le'amo yiten, Adonai yevarech et amo v'shalom. Uvnuchu yomar shvarana v'tesezel kaman. V'koanech yiboshu sedek v'hasidech yivarnenu. Ki lechakom natati lachem torati ata'azovu et hayim למחזיקים בה ותומכך מאושר דרכך דרכנו וכל תיבותיה שלום. renewal service. Invite Latar Mantia to join us. Yeah. Please, thank you. Thank you so much. The traditional service will be taking place in the chapel, led by Jan Brody. We'll see everybody back here after the services. Good. Let me see what we got here. Number 4, Elohai Neshama. I feel that I'll speak more about the recent decision of the Knesset regarding the judicial reform later. And I feel that some of the headlines could evoke a sense of despair. And when I spoke to my friend Yoav, who's very active in the demonstrations, as one of the speakers at many demonstrations, particularly in the north and the Galilee, his comment was, this country is crazy and somebody needs to struggle for it. And I think that one of the things that happens is when we have the inability to act and we read about things that we are powerless to change, it can evoke that feeling of despair. But when you have an opportunity to continue to struggle, you remain in the struggle. And so I think for all of us, whatever we're feeling, Elohai Neshama, may the soul that we're being given is pure. Can we see things for what they really are? Can we respond to the things we can control? Can we support the people that we want to support? Can we not have our souls be given over to despair, to retain that inner purity? Number 4, Elohai Neshama. Number 5, Ashira. I'm faithful and trust in the divine, and indeed my heart will exult in your deliverance. And we sing for God has been good to us. A line from Psalms of gratitude and appreciation, of both trust and faith, of hopefulness for tomorrow and gratitude for yesterday. It's great to pray with Lataro. Yeah, it's wonderful to hear a guitar speak to God. So, Ashira, I sometimes struggle on the return, so you just kind of like help me in whatever you do here. You can play around here and just tell me when we're back to here. Number 7, Rabba Amunatecha. It's a little easier for me. There's only 2 words. And I don't even think the guitar notes matter. I think that you can be the rhythm section, the guitarist, you can improvise, you can do whatever you want. Rabba, abundant emunatecha is your faith. The divine flow is abundantly present in our lives. So, the invitation for all of us is to try to catch that wave. Each of us has a unique wave that can propel us as we walk through life. And when we feel energized, we're catching that wave. When we feel de-energized, somehow we've been knocked off of that path. And hopefully this summer is for surfing together. And we'll surf right into the fall. So Rabba Amunatecha. Hey, Rabba, emunatecha, Rabba, emunatecha, Rabba, emunatecha, emunatecha, Rabba, emunatecha, Rabba, emunatecha, Rabba, emunatecha, emunatecha, hey, Rabba, 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 emunatecha, hey, Rabba. It's wonderful to pray with you and the guitar. Number 11, Shaviti. I think that the melody for Shaviti has this sense of, kind of like some of the other prayers, there is a sense of sadness. I don't know if, Lato, I don't know if the notes have like a minor feel to them, or they do have a minor feel, okay. So that's what's happening musically, so there's that sadness which, for me, evokes like this openness to brokenness. It says like, it allows me to move to a place where I might feel that degree of brokenness, and then it concludes with chavaya and ahava, that we want to fill that place of brokenness with a connection or a sense of the divine and of love. And so there's that healing element as well within the prayer. So it's an opportunity to lean into something that might be troubling in our lives, that might have a sense of heartache, and to try to both be aware of it, but also then invite a little softness, a little sense of the divine, a little love into that place of hurt. is so good to be back here. Invite you to feel some gratitude, whether it's a general feeling or a specific feeling, whether it's named or unnamed. If you want the full blessings, page 39, you can just respond amen to each blessing and keep your hands free and let your body experience the prayer as you express gratitude this morning. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Bless you, source of distinction, light of dimensions, who gives the roots of understanding to distinguish day from night. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Blessed are you, eternal, our God, ruler of the universe, who made me part of Israel. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Blessed are you, source of wisdom, life for the world, who has not made me a slave. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Blessed are you, Lord our God, ruler of the universe, who made me according to your will. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Blessed are you, source of vision, life of the world, who opens the eyes of the blind. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Blessed are you, and clothed one, our God, ruler of the universe, who clothes the naked. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Blessed are you, boundless one, life of the world, who frees the bound. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Blessed are you, source of healing, our God, ruler of the universe, who straightens the bent. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Blessed are you, open one, life of the world, who spreads out the earth over the waters. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Blessed are you, heroic one, our God, ruler of the universe, who makes firm my steps strong. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Blessed are you, great provider of life of the world, who provides for all my needs. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Blessed are you, great power, our God, ruler of the universe, who empowers Israel with strength. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Blessed are you, great beauty, life of the world, who crowns our people with beauty. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Blessed are you, source of strength, our God, ruler of the universe, who gives strength to the weary. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Blessed are you, awaken one, life of the world, remove sleep from my eyes and slumber from my eyelids. Amen. For these blessings and many personal ones left unnamed, we simply say Amen. Amen, amen, la la Heather, my condolences on your mother's passing. It's our first Shabbat back for me in person with you. So my condolences. We offer this moment now for those in mourning or reciting Kaddish to recite the mourner's Kaddish. I invite you to join in the Rainbow Siddur 224-82 and the Blue Siddur. May the memories of your loved ones be a blessing. If you had a recent loss, my condolences to you as well. Together, Yitzgedah v'yitzgedash shemechaba be'alma divra chirutei v'amlich malchutei b'chayechon uvyomechon uv'chayei tocho beit Yisrael ba'agala uvizman kariv v'imru amen. Yehi shmei rabba mavurach le'olam olamei almaya yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yipa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh Vitada, vitale, vitalal, shemei dekudisha, barichu, le'elat minko bechata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, damiran be'alma v'imru, amen. Yehi shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chaim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru, amen. Osei shalom b'mromav, hu ya'asei shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Number 18, Gale, reveal your presence to us. If we're feeling stuck, or a sense of not seeing our way through a particular challenge, may we see that pathway that allows us to move forward. May we see a glimmer of hope, or may we simply feel held and acknowledged that gives us the strength to continue to search for that path forward as we move through our lives. Gale, reveal your presence to us. That's beautiful. We're going to do an introduction to the Shema of Lach Amar Libi, the line from Psalms that says, says my heart seek my face, encouragement to seek the divine, and then the Shema is our expression of a connection with the divine, that when we seek God and we seek God's face, we recognize this radical oneness of divinity, as we say Echad at the end of the Shema, that God is one, God is oneness. And so Latar always puts a smile on my face when he plays Lach Amar Libi. It always feels like that tropical setting after a brief afternoon thunderstorm where the temperature's just dropped a few degrees and it feels fresh and clean and the blue skies have returned. And just a little taste of paradise the way you play another guitar. Number 21. As we prepare for the Amidah, this moment of a personal and private connection with the divine, you have at your disposal for this connection. You have a tool for this connection. You have words in your Siddur, 115 in the blue, 87 in the rainbow. If you want to omit the words and simply focus on your breath for a sense of connection, choose that. If you want just a little meditation on the Amidah as an attempt to try to feel in your body the words that are also traditionally recited, we acknowledge God's light, which creates a sense of contentment. As you breathe in, you can exhale, may I feel light. And in the next breath, may I feel content. Light, content. May you feel light. May you feel content. May we feel light. May we feel content. Whether you choose to remain seated or stand, the Amidah is an invitation for a moment of connection. Amen, amen, amen. Amen, amen, amen. Ay, 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 ay. Ay, 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 amen, amen. Alalay, alalay, yalalay, amen, amen. As many of you know, this week we marked Tisha B'Av, the 9th of the month of Av, a day in which we mourn the fateful calamities that have befallen the Jewish people over the centuries, primarily the destruction of the first and second temple, along with many other calamities. And the tradition, in terms of understanding and responding to Tisha B'Av, on one hand, offers many explanations. Common explanation for the destruction of the Second Temple is baseless or senseless hatred. In other words, an intra-group hatred, one Jew for the other Jew, that led to the destruction of the society, destruction of the Temple. Explanations for destruction of the First Temple fall into the categories of idolatry, sexual immorality, bloodshed, etc. And so in many ways, the tradition has said that we need to learn from these moments and try to improve our society. On one hand, it's, as we look back critically, we might think about that as blaming the victim for the events that were really outside of the individual's control. At the same time, it's very empowering to say, bad stuff happens, but, you're empowered to make things better in the future. And it's very empowering. One of the explanations amongst Chazal, the sages, and this comes from Bava Metzia 30b, is that for the destruction of Jerusalem, is that Rabbi Yochanan taught that Jerusalem was destroyed because judges adjudicated cases based on Torah law and did not go beyond the letter of the law. That they only looked at the law itself and didn't seek or try to understand that there were perhaps broader, unexplicit principles, enumerated values that could also be employed in the judging of cases. And so today, this question of going beyond the letter of the law or not going beyond it, in a way relates almost directly to the law that was recently passed in the Knesset in Israel. And so this was on Monday. I want to talk with you, for some of you might be familiar with the judicial reform that is playing out within Israel, which has led to government decisions and legislation. And on this other hand, there have been extraordinary protests, or I would say demonstrations within Israel. And I guess I'd rather make it sort of a question and answer opportunity to kind of help clarify what's going on. If people have questions, I think I've personally found it's a pretty difficult topic to understand. It gets into a field of, it will be called constitutional law, even though Israel doesn't have a constitution. That's the term, that will be often used to describe some of these reforms. But I guess the way I do it is, I'd love to start with just a couple things that people, we did this last night a little bit, we'll do it again today. What do you know about Israel's, either the way the government is structured, its judiciary, or some of the proposed judicial reforms? So we'll start with what we know to lay a foundation, and then I'll say, what questions do you have? And so the conversation this morning can be driven by those of you who, particularly by those of you who are curious or want some understanding, and hopefully I'll be able to provide it. I may not be able to on this particular topic. So just a few, anything simple that you know about Israel and its government and the judicial reform process that you'd like to just put on the table. Anyone? Shelley.
Well, my understanding
Yeah, but there's people at home, maybe, you know. Every time there'll be one person that, you know.
All right, and so now I'm publicly going to be wrong, but my understanding is that Israel was deliberately formed without a constitution and has basically adopted the British form of government, which is based on common law, which means the legislature kind of made a bunch of rules and laws, and that's what Israel has followed. The courts, applying a standard known as reasonableness, has been able to say yay or nay to those rules and laws till now.
Great. So, big fact, Israel does not have a constitution, even though I believe its Declaration of Independence called for the establishment of a committee that would complete a constitution, I think by 1950. That has yet to be done. So there is no constitution in Israel, and as you said, it follows something similar to the British system. Yeah, Merle?
Israel has a unicameral parliament, so the Knesset is it. So there isn't a second legislative branch that may moderate if you have two. Excellent,
right? So in contrast to the House and the Senate, a bicameral legislature, Israel has a unicameral legislature. And in addition to that, I don't know if you were going to make the same point, but in addition to that, the executive branch and the legislature really work in lockstep. They really are one of the same, in contrast to our system, in which the president and the legislature are quite different branches of government. Daniel?
I was going to add just that for us in the United States, we're so used to having the Constitution and that being the basis of everything we do. And we have the Supreme Court to say, is something constitutional, is it not constitutional? And then it seems a natural question, how on earth does Israel manage without one? And it's been a while since I studied this in school in Israel. Israel has what they call basic laws, Chokei Yesod, which are laws passed by the Knesset that are intended to be the foundation of how Israel operates. And these are laws that are separated out from other laws by requiring an extraordinary supermajority to pass them or to revise them or to overturn them. And this is something we read about in the papers occasionally, that someone is proposing a change to one of the basic laws. And I think sometimes people don't understand that and even leave out that crucial word. But that basically is how Israel has operated, and one of the basic laws, I believe, does in fact establish the judiciary. Establishes the rules of this, and correct me if I'm wrong, what has been talked about here is changing some procedural rules in terms of the relationship, the power relationship between the judiciary and the Knesset. It's been a certain way for 30 years. They were talking about changing it.
Anyone else in the what you already know? We're going to go to the next one? Okay, so then just one more thing to kind of build on what Daniel said is that the judicial reform has multiple elements to it. Some would say originally 5. I don't know if it's still 5. It's 4 or 5. And they basically, writ large, are about the relationship between the judiciary and this combined executive and legislative branch, and the relative power of the court to elected officials and elected representatives who will legislate. That's the big picture. So now let's go to questions and what I can be helpful with in terms of your understanding. Shari.
As I understand it, and I'm not sure, it's the conflict is giving the court more power, and the power not to listen to the legislature. Is that
the opposite? The fullness of the judicial reform is a reflection of people who would say that the balance of power between the court and the legislature is wrong, and we need to
relatively speaking, make the court less powerful vis-a-vis its ability to overturn decisions of the elected people and the representatives of the people.
And there's conflict about how judges are named to the court.
Right. So within the 5 proposed areas, there are one of them is appointments. Currently, there are a committee of 9 people appoint Supreme Court justices in Israel. 3 appointments to that committee are Supreme Court members, including the President of the Supreme Court. 2 are elected or appointed, I'm not sure, by members of the Israel Bar Association. And the remaining 4 are selected by the government. And the proposal, it wasn't voted on Monday, it was a separate one, but the proposal around appointments is to shift to eliminate the Israel Bar Association, right? The argument would be like, by what right should the lawyers in this country appoint Supreme Court justices? To shift either 1 or 2 of their appointments to the elected government, which would essentially give the government the majority on the appointments committee, if you will, right? So right now, if you think about blocks, there are 5 votes that are between the court and the Israel Bar Association, and 4 go to the government. And they're wanting to reverse that so that the government can appoint the people to the Supreme Court. That's appointments. There's the override clause, which would allow a simple majority of the Knesset to override a decision of the Supreme Court. So again, that when you think about checks and balances, and some would suggest in a country without a constitution, the relative powers of the court are perhaps more important in terms of checks and balances. That would be one that would give a simple majority in the Knesset the power to override decisions of the court. The law that was just passed on Monday night was, again, I think it was a basic law. I thought that they kept saying that it was written into the basic, but it doesn't make sense if it's a supermajority is required. So has to do with the concept of reasonableness, which we can talk about in a little more detail so we can be more, understand a little bit better the specific law that was passed. Appointments, override. There's 2 more. One of them has to do with legal advisors, and I don't quite understand how that affects things. I think right now the court appoints legal advisors to different ministries, so the Ministry of Education, the Ministry of Health, etc., has legal advisors appointed by the judiciary, and I think that they want to shift that to be appointed by elected representatives. I'm not sure the ramifications of that one about legal advisors. And there's a 5th. Does anybody remember the 5th? Oh, you were good. Let me just finish the 5th little point. Did bring some notes in case I had one of these moments. Override appointing judges. Oh, and the other one is an earlier retirement age for judges. Currently, the retirement age for judges is 70, and they want to lower the age for judges to 67. The controversy behind that is if it goes into effect immediately, 4 of the existing judges would be out, and if you then simultaneously make the change to appointments, then the existing government gets to appoint 4 judges to the Supreme Court. All right.
Can you walk us through Netanyahu's problems and how these changes will influence the decisions on the charges against him?
I don't know enough about the issue between Netanyahu and either corruption or bribery. I don't know if I don't know what phase it's in, I don't know if it's akin to there's a grand jury inquiry right now, or if they've, I don't know where it is, and I don't therefore know the ramifications of how any of these decisions would impact any of that. I think that so I can't speak to that specifically. I can speak to the specifics of the law that was passed has to do with reasonableness. It's nice to have at least a couple lawyers here who may understand. So reasonableness, Svirut? Yeah, the reasonableness is a judicial standard which a court can use to strike down something. In Israel, as if I understand it correctly, it applies to ministerial decisions. It does not apply to legislative decisions. In other words, when the whole Knesset votes on something, at least my understanding at least, reasonableness is not a standard that is applied to votes of things that are voted on. It's applied to a decision that the Ministry of Defense makes or the Minister of Education. And remember that in contrast to cabinet positions in our country, which are appointed, the ministers are members who have been essentially elected. It's not a direct election, but their party has been placed in power. And so the best way there are both administrative decisions that are made within a ministry, and there are appointments. And reasonableness can be used to strike those down. I'll give you a couple examples. And I hope that the examples that I read about are full enough to be illustrative of this principle. So reasonableness has been used by the Israeli Supreme Court to strike down a decision in 2007. I don't know what ministry it was. It could have been the Department of Education, it might have been something else. But in 2007, there was a real problem, and there remains a problem in the south of Israel, the area of Sderot, near the border with Gaza, that rockets are being fired from Gaza by Hamas and other groups into Israeli territory. There are a lot of schools, there are a lot of school children, and a decision had been made to reinforce classrooms in the area. However, they didn't decide to reinforce all the classrooms. They were going to reinforce some of the classrooms. I don't know why. I don't know if it was a lack of resources. Who knows why? So there was a petition that said essentially that it was unreasonable not to protect all the children. And the court then forced Ehud Olmert's government, Ehud Olmert was the prime minister at the time, to reinforce all the classrooms in that area. That's an area in which children have 15 seconds from the warning time to get to a shelter. And it was deemed that that would not be sufficient time for children in an unreinforced classroom to get to a place of safety. So you hear that that's not a voted decision. It wasn't like the whole Knesset met and decided which classrooms should we reinforce. It was, my assumption would be there was an allocation of resources to that ministry, and the ministry made a decision to reinforce certain classrooms and not others, right? So it's a decision, not an elective, voted on. There's another example from 2014. In Kfar Veradim, where on my wife's side of the family we have relatives who live. Kfar Veradim is in the north of Israel. The municipal council decided not to build a mikveh in the town. And the court said, that's unreasonable. Why did they say it was unreasonable? The religious services ministry had allocated the funds. The land was available. And although the court could not point to explicit discrimination, which would have therefore allowed a different legal standard to invalidate that decision, it seems that they felt that that was what was going on, but there was no specific legal violation, but they felt that it was unreasonable not to build that. So what would be going on? It would be, essentially the court was saying, we think the municipal council, despite the opportunity to build this, doesn't want to create a town that's conducive for religious people to live in. And perhaps doesn't want to create a town in which more religious people might move into. So we'll make sure that there's no mikveh there and discriminate against people who use mikvaot and who are religious. And the court struck that down. So again, you can see how that's, again, that one's a little different because it's the municipal council, not the federal ministry, so to speak. And you could argue both sides of that, right? You could argue, you know, thank God there's a stopgap measure when discrimination is at hand, even if a specific law hasn't been violated, that would prevent that sort of discrimination. And then on the other hand, you might argue, that's exactly why you have local authorities. These people were elected to make decisions for the town, and they're doing their best, and we don't want the Supreme Court to be meddling with the decisions of the local council. Another example of reasonableness, since that's the specific law that was passed, Aryeh Deri, member of Knesset, was convicted of certain crimes. I think it's around taxes and maybe something else. And as part of the plea agreement with the court, said, I will no longer get involved with public life. And the court said, okay, and I don't know exactly the details, maybe, okay, you don't have to go to jail, but there's a time of the sentence and you can't get involved with public life. We accept your commitment to not get involved with public life. His party did well enough in the elections, and Netanyahu appointed Deri to be a minister in the government. And the court said that's unreasonableness to the extreme. So there's different levels of unreasonableness, and the court said that would be considered extreme. So again, that gives you a sense of appointments. And the last one example that I'm aware of is, and for those of us on the Israel trip, we met someone who was one of the founding people to organize on Yom HaZikaron, on Israel's Memorial Day, a joint service for Israelis and Palestinians who have lost people during these years of conflict. This year, 15,000 people attended. It was, we didn't go, but there was a large attendance, and it's very controversial. For those who attend, they would feel that it's really very important to go, and there's others who feel that it's really inappropriate to be acknowledging loss of Palestinian life on a day when we're acknowledging our own fallen soldiers. So it's controversial. And Yoav Gallant, the Minister of Defense, who's in charge of visas and travel, etc., denied entry permits for a number of Palestinians who wanted to enter into Israel to participate in that. And the court said that was unreasonable. And again, I think it had to do with the lack of specificity why those people were denied particular permits. Every day, many people come in to work, etc. What was those people, why were they particularly denied a permit? So again, you get a sense about, it was a minister's decision. It wasn't a voted on law about which the court could apply the reasonableness standard. And it's applied in cases when the law doesn't speak. There's, if you will, there's no explicitly written law that would prohibit Gallant from granting or not granting these visas. And the court steps in these cases. I think that overall, I think that a number of Israelis acknowledge that the court could be better. I think that even people that I've spoken to who are protesting against the changes will acknowledge that. So one way of understanding, and this was, I think, if you read the journal, this in part, I think, was sort of the angle that Gary Rosenblatt took in the Jewish Journal, is that in some ways, Rosenblatt says the real issue here is the unilateral way in which this change was made, that it wasn't made with a sense of broad consensus and working together to improve the relationship between improve the power balance between the court and the executive and legislative branch, but it was done unilaterally, and that is splitting the society. So it was both the unilateral way of working that leads to this real rift and split in the society. I think that's Rosenblatt's take on this. Other guys? Yeah, Alan? And Jerry? Well, maybe we'll take two questions together. You hand that back to Jerry when you're done.
We've experienced here in the States, and elections have consequences. So Netanyahu can certainly say, hey, I was voted in, I won the election. But if people looked at, so now everybody's upset, but if they looked at who his group was, the extreme right and all that, why did you vote him in? And we had, and we had the same situation here in America, I have to say. So I hear it, and I understand the protests, but he won in some extent, and what did you expect? And what did you expect? Now the Haredim are really going to push for, what were they saying? That the men only, by the way, who study Torah, are as valuable as the soldiers in the field. What did you expect?
Right.
You voted for this
Right.
organization.
Yeah. Dr. Jerry as well?
I get quite emotional about this issue. This is what I do know, that my family and my friends in Israel tell Karen and I, don't come. Don't come now. And over the last 50 years, Karen and I have been in Israel for many good reasons and many difficult reasons, maybe 30 times. So we have a sense of feeling. And my family and friends say, don't come. I do know this also, that if you make an analogy between the number of people in the streets in Israel to the population and the possible number of people in the streets in America, it would be 20 million Americans in the streets. Now, I was in the streets in the 60s, and I can't imagine, and it never got close to 20 million Americans in the streets in the 60s. I listened to this conversation, and I start to shiver. I start to shiver. It gets very touching to me. But I just want to repeat again that Yonatan and Smidar would say, if they were alive, this is not my Israel. And the children, our dear friends' children, say they're glad that their parents are dead, that they don't see this happening in Israel. And there are some folks here who might know Yonatan and Smidar. And if you do know them, you would understand how they would be very, very sad about what's happening in Israel.
Thanks, Jerry. All right, we'll take Murray. It's almost like we should serve lunch in here and keep talking, huh?
It seems to be, back to the basic nitty-gritty of the whole situation, is that a majority is trying to be controlling, the Orthodox is trying to control a country that prevents the majority of the people who are not Orthodox control their lives, like the gays. What will without a check and balance in the government, what will they do about gays? What will they do about having equal service in the army? All these other factors. What will they do about the West Bank, the land? Will the conservative, ultra-Orthodox control? What will they affect the Palestinians that live in Israel as equal citizens in Israel? How does it affect? It seems to me that the conservative element, the Orthodox element in Israel is trying to control the whole country. And this is what upsets the liberal, normal citizen.
Just a sec, we'll go to Dan and then Mark.
Thank you. I'm going to make a couple of comments and leave a couple of questions. But first, I'm reluctant to get back into the technical and legal details of this after Jerry's comments. I don't want to detract from the points and and the feeling that Jerry expressed, which I think is very powerful and meaningful. But first of all, just a small note, the Israeli parliamentary system is based on the British parliamentary system, but the UK adopted a constitution in, I think it was 1848, sometime around there. So they actually have a constitution now that they are operating under. And one of the things that the Constitution provided is that in the UK, the Supreme Court is part of the House of Lords, but it's not the hereditary lords who get to make the decision. It's the law lords, and the law lords are appointed separately, and the powers of the law lords are set out by the Constitution. So they do have that Israel does not. But it's my understanding that the Supreme Court does have the power to review the acts of the Knesset under the reasonableness standard, and I read that there were 22 such instances since the founding of the State of Israel where the Supreme Court overturned a law enacted by the Knesset under the standard of reasonableness. Maybe there's some different aspect to it, but that is a big concern. And in terms of voting this guy in, as Alan was putting it, I read that the 64 seats of the Knesset that represent the ruling coalition, the governing coalition, those seats represent the parties that elected those seats represent less than 50% of the population, 48% of the population, and nearly 54% of the Knesset itself, and they are asserting majority rule over everybody else. And one of the things one of the primary purposes of a constitution, as in the United States, in addition to creating the government and setting out the rules and powers and responsibilities and limitations of the government, is to protect minorities against majorities. We see that obviously in the Bill of Rights. And in the United States, 53% of the House or the Senate just can't run roughshod over all minorities. The way the structure of the legislative branch wouldn't allow it, the president would have the opportunity to veto it, and the Supreme Court would be out there protecting it. And that's an important distinction in terms of our understanding of how things work in the government compared to how they work in Israel. The example that the rabbi gave about the mikveh, where it does seem, you would think that it would be an unreasonable thing for the Supreme Court to do, that it would be an understanding objection. You would understand the objections to what the Supreme Court did to meddle in the affairs of this local group that by its own judgment decided not to build a mikveh when it was possible to build a mikveh. They said they don't want one. Well, for example, in the United States, if you have a small town in the Midwest where 100% of the population, every single citizen and resident of that town belongs to a particular Protestant denomination, for example, and they decide come Christmas time that they're going to allocate money to pay to the church to build them a creche on the front lawn of the church. Now, in the United States, that is clearly unconstitutional. They're not allowed to do that. Whereas you think it would be unreasonable for the Supreme Court to stop it in Israel, but the US Supreme Court would stop it without question, because that's inconsistent with our fundamental laws. And the question I wonder is, how is this, what seems to be a major change in the structure of the government of Israel, such that the equivalent of 20 million people are in the streets, how is that not a fundamental change that would violate or that would change the basic laws? How is that structure not part of the basic law system that would require a supermajority? And if a supermajority were required, if such a law would take not 64 votes, but 80 votes in the Knesset, it would require participation by the opposition, and it would require a near consensus or a larger portion of a consensus of the population to approve it, they would have to bring in other views, they'd have to be less extreme, and it would not produce the riots it would not produce the widespread dissatisfaction and demonstrations. And then quickly, in terms of how this could affect the legal status of Netanyahu personally, I don't think it would change anything directly, but if you give the power of the if you give the Knesset the power to override a decision of the Supreme Court, there is talk that that the Knesset, if Netanyahu feels he has the strength to do it, would just make what he is accused or indicted of no longer illegal, retroactively. And if the Supreme Court doesn't have the power to strike down that act of the Knesset, then he would have full discretion to make illegal or legal anything he wanted to, and that wouldn't be good.
I know that there's a couple other hands that went up. Hopefully we can continue the conversation over lunch. A few additional responses. I think that one is to for me personally, it's been helpful to separate the ramifications of the law that was passed and the potential ramifications if the whole package was passed, because those are really two different things. And so reasonableness has its own set of applications. A big concern around the reasonableness has to do with corruption, that you could appoint anybody you want. You could appoint people from your party to be in charge of government statistics or something like that. You could appoint party favors. So you might have people in public service who really aren't qualified to be there. And reasonableness is a way of protecting against that. So there's a concern around corruption, malfeasance within the government in the absence of reasonableness. And there's also a part of I would say the reason there's a lot of people in the streets is out of broader fears of what would happen if all of these were passed, or if other elements of judicial reform were passed around the treatment of homosexuals within Israel, treatment of women, treatment of minority, protection of rights, democratic values. Not so much, just to clarify, it's like not democracy as much as democratic values that are at stake with the judicial reform. And then I forget all these other things that we could say to clarify, but I'll just share a few points, partly to Murray's point. So my friend Sharon, who, they are not religious. They like to make kiddush on Friday nights. They participate in the holidays. But, in Israel, it's like a black and white. You don't have what we have here in terms of religious freedom and opportunity, or not freedom, but the varieties of expressions of Judaism is not as broad in Israel. And she said that, it's making us, the secular, really care less, pushing us away from Judaism and pushing us away from religion is her personal experience about what's happening. It's that the religious viewpoints are seen, Judaism as expressed in Israel is seen as an anti-liberal religion, and therefore it's very off-putting. And feel that there's concern that religion and religious values will be imposed upon people, that it would become a theocracy were these other rules to be passed. Definitely, it's a lot of pain is felt by individual families. A lot of families are being torn apart by the proposed changes. There are really strong feelings on either side. As Alan said, the other side would argue, we're not the extremists. We want an election. You're protesting in the street, and you should respect an election that was passed. And then my friend Yoav, as I mentioned earlier, he said, in response to, you'll see some comments that people are either leaving Israel or considering leaving Israel or talking about taking their monies out of Israel. He is fiercely against the changes. He's very active in the demonstrations, and he would say this country is crazy and somebody has to struggle for it. And so I think it's just important to remember that at least the people that I'm talking to may be a little different than really aren't in a place of despair. They're at a place of we're going to continue to struggle for what we want, just as the other side is struggling for what they want. But in either case, it's still an expression of a lack of despair. Is not an operative feeling. But it's one of fighting for the country that you love and care about very much. You'll see that You know, Israeli flags are just ever present at the demonstrations. The demonstrations will end with Hatikva. So it's very much a very strong expression, I think, on either side about really the caring for the soul of the country of Israel and a deep and passionate struggle that is taking place as we speak. So stay tuned. The Knesset is on recess until October. So there are no decisions that will be made around this. We'll continue to watch and see what happens. Let's rise for Aleinu. Aleinu l'shabech la'adon ha'kol latet gdula liotzer breshit shelo asanu k'goyei haratzot velo samanu k'mishpachot ha'adama shelo sam chelkeinu kahem v'gor aleinu k'chol hamonam v'anachnu korim u'mishtachavim u'modim Lifnei melech malachei hamalachim hakadosh baruch hu shehu notei shamayim veyoser haaretz u'moshev yekarov hashamayim imav ushkinatu zo v'govei meromim hu Eloheinu eino emet malkeinu efezulato Kakatu b'torato v'datayom v'hashevota elevavecha ki Adonai hu Elohim b'shamayim imav ve'aretz mitacha eino Kakatu b'tortef Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed v'ne'emar haya Adonai le'melech al kol haaretz v'yom ha'hu yeh Adonai echad u'shemo echad. Please be seated. We want to remember those who passed in the past 30 days. Leah Schwager, mother of Judy Locke. Nancy Coates, mother of Heather Coates-Krawitz. Lee Pachter, the mother of Richard Pachter, grandmother of Cantor Sarah. Marcia Clemens, the sister of Carol Goldenberg, and Lauren Oppenheim, the grandfather of Jacqueline Firestone. Today, remember the Yortzeits of Jeannie Goldstein, the aunt of Marcia Pfeffer. And coming up, the Yortzeits of Carl Sloan, husband of Toby Sloan, Elliot Strauss, the father of William Strauss, Martha Ledeen, aunt of Alpha Parker, Samuel Bean, father of Marjorie Bean, Samuel Robinson, father of Leslie Freedom, Barry Brooks, the father of Howard Brooks. And coming up on Monday, Gussie Lemon, the grandmother of Joan Rich, and Tilly Lou, the grandmother of Larry Lou. Are there any other Yortzeits? Yeah. And Alexander Harry Flaxer. And I invite all those in mourning observing a Yortzeit to rise and will join in Kaddish. It's in the Blue Book on 184. Together, Yitgedal v'yitgedash Shemech Haba. Be'oma divrach chirutei v'yamlich malchutei. B'chayechon v'yomehon v'chayei t'chol Beit Yisrael. Ba'agala u'vizman kariv v'imru Amen. Yehi Shmei Rabba Mevarach le'olam l'mei Amaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yituman v'yitnaseh. Vitada, vitale, vitala, shemei de kudisha, barichu, le'ela, minko, bechata, v'shirata, tush bechata, v'nechimata, de'amiran be'oma, v'imru, amen. Yehi shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chaim aleinu ve'akol Yisrael, v'imru, amen. Oseh shalom v'mrama, uyaseh shalom, aleinu ve'akol Yisrael, v'imru, amen. Please keep your hearts open as we offer a prayer for healing. Mekor us sing, and let us say, Amen. Please, God, source of healing, be with Rowan Huffman, Yechil, Moshe Ben Yochevich, Ginny Silva, Caitlin Crump, Avon Coyne, Lynn Cooperstein, Dai Batser, Ari Divi, Be'er, Shulmodov, Ben Chana Sarah, Casey Batsui Moshe, Joel Parnes, Stephen Everett. Give strength to Owen Ben Devorah, Michael Chayba Bat Yabela, Miriam Davida Bat Dana, Dana Murray, Levin Goya Rachel Bat Sarah, Miriam Evan Finmore, Beryl Ben Goya Rachel, Brindle Sarah Bat Chanas, Benjamin Ben Chana, Lev Shalom Ben Miriam Shoshana. Return the smiles to Chaim Elud Ben Ari Lev, Raful Ben Achama, Judy Krasker, Bruce Samuels, Esther Bat Malka, Eliyahu Yona Ben Rivka, Itamiriam Bat Sheva, Shoshana Geisha, Blum Bat Levi, Lior Simcha Bat Sarah, Yehoshua Ben Shmuel, Devorah Rachel Bat Chana Sarah. Give light to Efrat Fegi Bat Sarah, Esther Baruch Ben Shana Etta, Mark Singer, Marlene Sefanor, Mary Abrahams, Chaya Bat Shimon, Ronnie Kapelnik, Miriam Bat Nachama, Bravo Obleski, Machli Shalamit Bat Yonit. And give healing to Sarah, Leah Bat Chana, Beryl Bat Sarah, Chaya Hana, Chaim Be'er, Sarah Esther, Libby Pearl, Donald Dunn, Chaim Herschel Ben Fredo, Adrian Mavregas, Reuven Eiser Ben Hana, and Ethan Yellen. And from the congregation, Dan?
Esther Leah Bat Shendel Lamoshe.
Elizabeth? Daniel? Scott? Murray? John? Judy? Diana? Yeah, Lois? Jan? Pablo? Alba? Pam? Lois? Donnie? Simon? Alan? Heather? Jerry? Faith? Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say Amen. Representative of the board, Michael Smirka.
Shabbat Shalom to everyone. Just came back from Israel a couple weeks ago, so it was interesting to hear the discourse today. Complicated, obviously. Is anyone planning to go to Israel soon? I know there was just a trip that went there, but you know, it's it never ceases to amaze me the changes that happen there. Still a land of wonder, though. Thank you very much to Mark Weiner for reading Torah, and to Alan Sidman for chanting Haftarah. Welcome back, Rabbi. Cantor returns August 25th for Shabbat at the JCC pool, and here on August 26th. So mark your calendars. Reminder that this Wednesday is your chance to donate blood, big mitzvah, so the gift of life, at the Red Cross Blood Drive, August 2nd. So who's running that? Do we know? Oh, Alan. Okay, so get in touch with Alan. Okay, great. And I was remiss to say that I apologize. Joe Simons usually gives the announcements, but he could not make it today, so I apologize for not stating that originally. So we're gearing up for the high holidays, and if you haven't renewed your membership, or if you're considering CSH as your new spiritual home, please contact the office. High holiday seats are included as a benefit of membership, and we'd love to see you here this year. The new book list for Becky's Book Club is out, and they will start to meet in person again in September, so get on that. Don't forget that Shabbat on the Beach is happening August 18th. We were rained out, or the threat of severe weather prevented us from conducting the last one. So hopefully we'll get some good weather this coming event. If you're planning on doing that or attending, please RSVP as soon as you can or as soon as you think. There's no cost to doing that. So it helps for the people who are coordinating to figure out what the plans are going to be in advance. So additionally, don't forget that the JCC Pool Shabbat is happening on August 25th. Reminder that we'll continue our summer Shabbat schedule through Labor Day weekend. Make sure you know the timing of services. Next week, David Spar will be here as the renewal musician. Help us by taking all your trash and leaving the sanctuary as you found it, and make sure that you have a blue and red book, prayer book, underneath your chair at the completion of services, please. Finally, we'll hold a Mission of Deeds donation drive on August 9th. Please note there's a change in what donations are being requested, so check out the flyer. Pam Fine is here today. She is a CHS member and a volunteer with the organization, and tell us a bit about this drive. Thank you very much, and again, Shabbat Shalom.
I'll talk fast because I know everybody's hungry, but I just want to tell you for just a few minutes who Mission of Deeds is and why I'm here. We are an organization in Reading. We've been around for about 30 years, and so far we've helped over 50,000 families. We are a totally volunteer-supported agency, charity, that gives new beds of various sizes, which is our largest expense, to people in need. We give new sheets and pillows. We give gently used furniture and household goods without charge to those who are in very big need. We also, in the winter, give new winter coats, and throughout the year, we give $150 supermarket gift cards. We were founded in 1993 by a man named Tony Trigliani. Now, he came from extreme poverty, and even though he became a very successful businessman, that memory stayed with him, and he had a lifelong compassion for those in need. At first, he decided that he would provide beds to children to get them up off the floor. So when he went into the apartments to deliver the beds, he saw that basically the apartments were empty. So gradually over time, he began to give more and more to these people. And he remained very active in Mission of Deeds until he passed away in 2011. Our clients include veterans, those transitioning from homelessness, those fleeing domestic violence, victims of natural disasters like fires, floods, new immigrants, etc. And they come from very diverse racial, ethnic, and religious backgrounds. But the one thing that they all have in common is that they lack the financial resources to turn their empty spaces into functional, loving homes. There's a referral process. You can't just knock on the door and say that you want something. We work with over 100 social service agencies, and we also take referrals from places of worship, doctors, therapists, and school nurses. Mission of Deeds neither accepts government funding nor seeks it, and is 100% supported by private individuals, businesses, and foundations. Unfortunately, the pandemic and the economic downturn have made the need greater than ever. This year, we're scheduled to service over 1,000 families, and that's a lot of families because we are a very small organization. We service Middlesex and Essex counties, which is a very large area. We pick up furniture in 11 towns on the North Shore. You can also drop things off in our Reading location. You can, at any time, come and visit us and see what we're about. I volunteered my whole adult life, basically. I've lived in a lot of places, and I have volunteered with a lot of different organizations. But I have been with Mission of Deeds for 6 years since I came to this part of the country, and I've seldom seen an organization better than Mission of Deeds at treating clients with the dignity and the respect that they deserve. If it were not for the volunteers and the donors, we would cease to exist. So I hope that you will donate and bring your items to the synagogue. The flyer is out in front. Right now, the donation day is Wednesday, August 9th, and the drop-off time is 11 to 4 p.m. We also take monetary donations. If you don't have the items that we are looking for right now, we are in very big need of kitchen items. Glasses, dishes, silverware, pots and pans, utensils, all the things that people need to start a kitchen again. Anyone is welcome to come at any time to visit us. If you do have a lot of questions for me, I'm going to be here for lunch. I will be happy to answer them then. I can give you my phone number if you need my help and cannot make it on Wednesday the 9th. And there are also brochures.
And where is the drop-off?
The drop-off is here at the synagogue. Thank you. Yes, it's here at the synagogue. So I thank you for listening, and thank you in advance for any of your donations.
Pam, we all have it's an obligation. We have a mitzvah to perform tzedakah. And so, Pam, we are grateful for the work that you do individually, but also even more so that you've created this opportunity for all of us to participate in this mission of deeds and to fulfill the mitzvah of tzedakah by donating to the people who need it. Let's conclude with Adon Olam on page 187, then we'll make Kiddush and Motzi. Right? Yeah. Adon Olam Asher Malach B'Terem Ko Yitzir Nivra Le'et Na'asa V'Hefzoko Azai Melech Shemo Nikra Ve'acharei Chichlot HaKol Levado Himnoch Nora Ve'hu Haya Ve'hu Ove Ve'hu Yeh B'Tifara Ve'hu Echad Ve'en Sheni Lehamshilo Le'achbira B'li Reishi B'li Tachlit Ve'lo Ha'oz Ve'hamisra Ve'hu Eli Ve'chai Go'ali Ve'tzochem Li B'Yetzara Ve'hu Nisi Humanos Li Menakosi Ve'yom Eka Be'yado Afki Ruchi Be'yati Sham Ve'ya'ira Ve'im Ruchi Gevi'ati Adonai Li Ve'lo Ira. Please rise and join me for Kiddush. V'shameru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. איי 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 בני ובני ישראל עוזי לעולם כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ את יום השבת לקדשו, שש ימים תבוא ועשית את מלאכתך, וביום השביעי שמעת לנו אלוהיך. לא תעשה כמוך אתה ובין ביתך, עבדך ואמתך ובהמתך וגרך אשר בשעריך. כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ, את הים ואת כל אשר בם, וינח ביום השביעי, כן ברך אדוני יום השבת מקדשהו סברי. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, בורא פרי הגפן. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהים מלך העולם אשר כשמרתו וציוונו על נטולי ידיים. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם המוציא לחם מן הארץ. אמן. Shabbat Shalom b'Te'avo.
there was the whole business of the rotating premiership that they did at one point, right? The whole idea of having ministers of the government who were from the opposition, who were not part of the elected coalition. So like the guys that they called at the time, and I heard Israelis joking, how exactly do you explain this to people from outside of Israel? What does this even mean? And I guess the point that keeps coming back to me is, you know what? It was a weird thing at the time. It was controversial at the time. And Israel got past it. So, and the foundations of Israel are strong, and it's something I'm very proud of. You know, they've gotten through a lot.